Yo, it's your boy 100K. You watching Versus. And on this week's edition, we steady pushing buttons. Welcome to season 3, and the way we doing this one, we're gonna do this one William O'Neal versus Uncle Moses Wright. And if you don't know the story, don't worry, I'll be happy to tell you the details right here on this week's edition of Versus. Stay tuned.
There's something wrong. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Nah, I definitely agree with that shit. Damn, Beretta, man. Fuck. Bro, I know you got bicycle, man, but you gotta think sometimes. Shit. Some of this shit don't even Bro, I was talking to my suckers, I'm the only one who listen, mirror on the wall. Who the realest nigga in it?
Came into the room, started shaking the chair. Said, Chairman, wake up, the pigs are rapping. Still half asleep, I looked up, and I saw bullets coming from, it looked like the front of the apartment, from the kitchen area. They were, pigs were just shooting. And this time, I jumped on top of the chairman. He looked up. Looked like all the pigs converged at the entranceway to the bedroom area, back bedroom area. The mattress is just going, you could feel bullets going into it. I just dead, everybody in there. When he looked up, he didn't say a word, he didn't move, except for moving his head up. He laid his head back down to the side like that. He never said a word, and he never got about the bed. The person who was in the room, they kept hollering out, stop shooting. We have a pregnant woman, a pregnant sister in here. At that time, I was 8.5 to 9 months pregnant. My baby was to be delivered in 2 weeks. Pigs kept on shooting. So he kept on hollering out. Finally, they stopped. They pushed me and the other brother by the kitchen door and told us to face the wall. Heard the pig say, he's barely alive, he'll barely make it. I assume they were talking about Chairman Fred. But then, they started shooting the pigs, they started shooting again. I heard the sister scream. They stopped shooting. Pig said, he's good and dead now. The pigs were running around laughing, they were really happy, talking about Chairman Fred is dead. I never saw Chairman Fred again.
O'Neal would be instructed by Mitchell to drug Fred Hampton so that he would be incapacitated that night when there was a raid planned, the goal of which would be to assassinate Hampton. What's interesting is how conflicted and shaken up O'Neal is shown to be in this moment. Time for him to seal another man's fate. Remember that 1989 interview I mentioned earlier? The one where we learn that O'Neal is the world's most incompetent criminal. That is the only interview William O'Neal ever did. Throughout this interview, he is pretty full of shit. He repeatedly contradicts himself. At one point, he says he had no idea there'd be a raid on Hampton's house. At another, he says he knew there'd be a raid. He also claims he didn't drug Hampton, which is absolutely untrue. He insists he doesn't think he did anything wrong and doesn't feel particularly guilty about it. At one point, he insists he never betrayed anyone and never really saw himself as part of the Panthers. Then, the next minute, he's weirdly trying to claim some kind of clout for being part of the Panthers, saying, I was part of the struggle, that's the bottom line. I wasn't one of those armchair revolutionaries. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? You joined as a Fed. You were part of the struggle on the other side. Overall, the entire interview is an incredible display of denial and cope. And despite his insistence that he, totally doesn't care that he directly assisted in the murder of one of the most important revolutionaries in 20th century America, he has relatives who tell a very different story, saying he was forever tormented by guilt. Shortly after the interview aired in 1990, O'Neal took his own life. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions on who was telling the truth between him and his family. The time the headlines were parroting the police and FBI narratives that it was a shootout in which half the shots were fired by the police and half by the Panthers.
Occupants of the apartment attacked them with shotgun fire. The officers immediately took cover. The occupants continued firing at our policemen from several rooms within the apartment.
But this was quickly found to be a complete lie. This wasn't a shootout. It was an execution. The police fired hundreds of shots into the house, killing a member from another branch named Mark Clark, who was standing guard. His gun went off as a result of his dying convulsions. That was the only shot fired by the Panthers. Many others were wounded, and Hampton's pregnant partner was pulled out of the bed with a gun pointed at her pregnant belly before an officer stood over the drugged, incapacitated Fred Hampton, who posed no threat to anyone, and shot him twice in the head. This lines up accurately with the description of events according to witnesses, including Hampton's partner Akua Nyeri, then going by Deborah Johnson. She was a consultant on this film along with her and Hampton's son, Fred Hampton Jr., which likely contributed to the accuracy of much of the film.
Okay, so where do we start with this one? Like I said, this one is kind of touchy-feely, real button pushy, like, you know, so I guess we'll start with William O'Neal. Now, for those who don't really know the full story, I would suggest y'all go and watch Judas the Black Messiah. It's on HBO. If you got the Max app, they just changed it from HBO Max to Max. Now, it's definitely worth subscribing because they got a bunch of good stuff on the HBO. They do not fuck off with the movies and the shows. Like, they get real in depth. That's why I had some clips that we started off with. But let's get right into it. Basically, car thief stealing cars, got caught, and to get himself from out of doing prison time, he agreed to be an informant or to infiltrate the Illinois Black Panther Party, which was Fred Hampton's jurisdiction, which was his area. Now, a little bit about this dude, Fred Hampton, man. First of all, at the time of his death, he was 21 years old. Like, just swallow that pill for a minute, you know what I mean? 21 years old, and was able to organize the things he organized. Free breakfast for the kids, was able to initiate a truce with different gangs, and this is Chicago, you know what I'm saying? Like, Chirac, you know, like one of the most violent cities in America. He was able to get that level of coordination, right? Now, obviously, back in the 60s, this was the same time that you had your Martin Luther Kings, Malcolm X, so the federal government wasn't having that shit. Now, in the pretense of this versus doing Fred Hampton and the Emmett Till situation, is not so much as focused on them, it's more of the people that allow the bait to be sealed somewhat. And in Fred Hampton's case, it would have been the William O'Neal. In Emmett Till's case, it would have been Uncle Moses Wright. Now, speaking as far as William O'Neal, 5 years to me, bro, you got to pay the time for your crime, man. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody make you steal cars. Ain't nobody make you live that life. You feel me? That was something that you chose to do. Fred Hampton was doing something for the community, for everyone. You know what I mean? And everything that they tried to throw at him, it just didn't stick, cause dude was a good dude. Didn't do drugs, wasn't violent, wasn't, like, you know what I mean? Wasn't the evil monster that they tried to portray him out to be. William O'Neal was just selfish, you know what I mean? Didn't want to do the time, so he wanted to, I guess, get out of prison. So, long story short, as he's giving this information and all of that, he sees the inner workings of the organization. Now, it was a couple of times that they almost figured him out, you know what I mean? And they put that pressure to him. Now, that should have been enough to make him slow it down, But, you know, once the FBI done got their grips in you, I mean, they start playing the mind games with you. Now, what's fucked up about it is William O'Neal was not a mastermind. He was not the greatest rocket science. He wasn't the smartest man in the world. Wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. But before the famous raid, they actually tried to get him to poison Fred Hampton. Tried to give him something to put in his food. Now that, to me, eliminated any deniability on William O'Neal's part where he can say that he didn't know that they was trying to kill him. You don't need to drug a person if you just trying to arrest him. If you just trying to lock him up. Like, I mean, come on now. You got to make it make some kind of sense. So with that being on the table, you knew they was trying to kill him. I mean, I don't think they really made no bones about it. I really believe that at the time, he just looked at it like, I don't want to go to prison. They ain't got nothing to do with him. So, the fact that they asked him for the blueprints, to me, that in itself, I was flabbergasted. Like, when I seen the movie, I seen the level of willingness that the FBI was willing to go to infiltrate. It don't surprise me, but it did surprise me that fuck saying it's the police, fuck saying freeze, fuck saying come out with your hands up. Them bitches just went there and started shooting. Like, you feel me? They just went there and started shooting. Now, in all of these particular cases, they did their homework and research, knowing exactly who they was dealing with when it came to Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. So they was up against it. Now, comparing them is hard to compare, but just to put William O'Neal on perspective, he ended up killing himself like years after the event, after he did that famous interview where he was pretty much trying to justify his actions. Now, that ain't no actions to be justified, because a man that really didn't do no wrong to nobody, only tried to help and unite, was taken short just because he was organizing and unifying black people. And one thing about the government and the way it worked back then, they knew that the best way to make division or make people against each other is to have other black people go at black people, because, you know, for some reason we just can't see that the strength is in numbers. The strength is in our unity. Like, the only time that these other organizations or these other oppressors can even do anything to us is when we ourselves aren't together. We're not like all on the same cause, when we cause disruption amongst us. So I said all of that to say is that was very fucked up, and we're gonna put that in perspective and gauge that against this uncle Moses Wright, which is a whole different thing, and we finna get into that.
This is Moses Wright. I am the uncle of Emmett Lewis Till. Sunday morning about 2:30, someone called at the door, and I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "This is Mr. Wright. I want to talk with you and the boy." And when I opened the door, there was a man standing with a pistol in one hand and a flashlight in the other hand. And he asked me, did I have two boys there from Chicago? I told him I had. And he said, I want the boy that done all that talk. So we might go around to 2 rooms, and I found the boy in the bedroom, in the bed with my baby boy. I heard this noise in the bedroom.
Aroused him out of the bed, had no idea the kind of people that he was dealing with, he was faced with. He had no way of conceiving what the South was like, no kind of way.
Asked was the age of Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright answered, 64, sir. And then Malana told him to hush his mouth or he won't live to see 65.
With the point that Mila. And that was, oh my, that was quite a moment then. Because you had the grabs, you had the people grumbling and grumbling. And we later found out that blacks didn't do that in Mississippi.
He was willing to put himself at risk. He was not going to lie. He was not going to back down. He was not going to be intimidated. And you had to really admire the courage of somebody who, despite being brought up in that culture and the culture really of slavery, would defy the mores by insisting on telling the truth.
Stop. All right. Stop. Cause see, me and my grandma had the same fucking argument all the time. Just about the same shit. The culture. Like, oh, well, you wouldn't understand because you didn't grow up in those times and things that you are accustomed to. Now, I do understand down south was a whole different story than up north. But we gotta do it. I gotta do it just because it's gonna be definitely hard to stomach. Now, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that full disclosure out there right now. You know what I'm saying? Parental advisory is advised. This shit finna push all kind of buttons. Like I said, man, at the same time, it got to be done. This shit has to be said. If ain't nobody else gonna say it, I guess somebody has to be the one to say it. But coming up on this week's edition of Versus, I got to take it here. I'm sorry, y'all, but we got to take it here because it needs to be done. The betrayal, the sacrifices, and everything that people went through to elaborate and illustrate how nasty this shit is. I just want to real quickly touch on Uncle Moses Wright, great uncle to Emmett Till. Now, first of all, hearts and respects go out to that family because that was painful, like real painful. But like I said, in comparison to William O'Neill, I just want to like expand on exactly the story. Like I said, if y'all ever seen this show, I think it's on Hulu now, but it came on ABC. Women of the Movement. I think they did a real good job of like reenacting the story. I know they had to change some of the names and stuff, like, you know, for dramatization and stuff. But they also got a few movies out, a bunch of documentaries out. I mean, this was what, 1955. So I mean, it was long ago, but not long ago. You know what I mean? But anyway, with all that out of the way, just a quick piggyback on the story. He goes to visit Emmett and his mom's up north of Chicago. Is from Chicago. He invited, I think it was one of the cousins, like, you know what I'm saying, to come down and help him work in the fields. Emmett wanted to go spend time with the family, you know, spend time with his cousins, you know what I mean, from Chicago, and only child, so he's Chicago was pretty much all he knew, you know, and it was some racism, but I mean, up north racism and down south racism was totally different. So I mean, I think that's to be said. But the point of this argument, to go ahead and get straight to the nitty gritty, you know what I mean, was it was proposed by the uncle, far as I know, proposed by the uncle, like, yeah, man, you know, the mom should let him come, do some work, you know, spend some time with the family, this and that. Now, the mom, Mamie Till, at the time, she really was real hesitant. I think they was making plans to do something else around that same time, but Emmett was persistent. I mean, he really wanted to go spend time with the family. And I mean, I get it. I mean, the man 14 years old, and he, you know, his bigger cousins going, he want to go, he want to, you know what I mean? Now, this is where me, and like I said, I had these talks with my grandma, a lot of other people. A lot of people may have disagreed with like my take, and I'm just saying it from based on the information as it has been presented to me. Like, before I dive into this, like I said, I mean, this is no shape or form disrespectful to any part from just, you know what I'm saying, just for the sake of just comparing Moses Wright to William O'Neill in the sake of what happened to the individuals that they was involved with. Now, as he came down, first of all, in my opinion, but first let me tell the story. Came down to Mississippi, like in the 1950s, so you can imagine how that shit was. Wasn't quite pulling his weight in the fields, picking cotton, you know what I'm saying? Now the cousins kind of somewhat checked him about that, but they was really more on some play teasing with him, like, you know what I mean? He was really articulate, especially for that age, real talkative, which was a plus up north. Down south for a young black man, not so much, right? Now, there was plenty signs of his unawareness for his surroundings and the culture and all of that, but the cousins and the uncle were very aware. So, getting back to the gist of what I'm saying, they go to the store, and you know, I forgot what they bought. Like, that's not really even important what they bought, but somebody dared him, accused him of something, and he's saying that he can get the phone number or something like that, something to the effect of hollering at this white lady behind the counter. You know what I mean? Now they teasing him, they, you know, kind of like bothing him up to like do the shit, thinking he not really finna do it, thinking that he know better. But, you know, the man from Chicago, the man 14, the man don't really know, you know what I mean? Like, the severities of the situation. So, long story short, he goes in there, and from the report, this and that, she say he whistled, he say, you know, whatever. But something was said to the point that she comes out that bitch and she go grab the fire. So they running, this and that. Now, the kid's scared, you know what I mean? But they did not tell the father, which was Emmett's uncle, right? So a couple days later, they knock on the door in the middle of the night. These guys, white guys, they come to the door looking for Emmett. Now, they came with the fire, but they come into the home and get Emmett from out the home, saying that they just want to talk to him. They just want to teach him a lesson somewhat. And I think by now everyone knows the way that they ended up. They ended up killing him, beating him, lynching him, tying him up to, I think it was something they put him in the river. It was fucked up. It was fucked up beyond fucked up. Now, for the story of my debate from where we going, I personally, like I said, I mean, I grew up in the 90s basically. I'm born 87, so I'm basing it off my upbringing from what I know. If you go stay with a relative, or if you go to a family member's house, the adult in that house is technically responsible for your well-being. Now, the reason why I'm saying all of this, because on most of all the documents, the one thing that they all have consistent is that they was giving Moses Wright a lot of pats from the back and glorification because he testified, because he was able to say in court who came to his house and took his nephew. Me personally, just speaking for me, if you are the male figure and you are the adult, I could see if they took him from out and about, and by the time you knew about it, it was too late. But for them to come into your house and take him, I feel like you should have did more. Like, how do you tell his moms that he was took from out of your house, from out of the bedroom that you was supposed to protect? Now, I know it's easy to say 20/20 hindsight, but if you just want to go and take him to go talk, then you taking both of us. You know what I mean? Like, he does not leave that house without me. Now, a lot of people was getting pushed back with saying, well, in those times, you would have probably got everybody killed, everybody would have. But at this time, and I get that because, like, that's how the times and the cultures was. My fault, the way I kind of fought the uncle, was as soon as he hit that train, you go ahead and give him the game. You go ahead and lace him up then. I really would have, honestly, I wouldn't have even suggested that he come because you can tell, you know, what, especially as teenagers, you can tell what kind of kid you're dealing with. You can tell like what he can handle and what he can't handle. If you knew Mississippi was X, Y, and Z and Chicago is A, B, and C, why would you even offer, like, you know what I'm saying? He's living a very good life, very productive. If anything, you should be proud. You should be trying to get your kids up there. You know what I mean? Let alone bringing him down to the fucked up shit that was the South. But I get it, you needed some extra hands, and you did want him to know his family. Now, the part that I'm saying is not so much as going against the culture, putting your life in risk. I ain't really saying all of that. That's a byproduct of what happens after the fact. What I'm saying is, as soon as he on the train, all that nice guy shit, bro, this ain't Chicago. This ain't this ain't Mr. Nice World, everybody your friend and hee ha ha, and we play and sing kumbaya. You gotta be tough on him. You gotta be rough on him. You gotta cuss him out. You gotta do all of these things so he can be prepared, so he'll understand that this ain't Disneyland. This ain't fucking playtime. You know what I mean? Because you dealing with lives, like real lives. Now, if you didn't lace him up, you didn't gave him the game. Like, first of all, soon as, if y'all at work, y'all at work. If all the other cousins working, nigga, you working. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no days off, ain't no preferential treatments. Because all of that's doing is creating a false narrative. You creating an image of the landscape that doesn't exist. And in that time, not only is it dangerous, it's deadly. You know what I mean? It's deadly. If you in a dangerous place and you know it's dangerous, the kid doesn't necessarily need to know what the dangers are, but they need to know that it's dangerous. They need to know that whatever you were doing, you cannot continue to do. They should be more afraid of you than the things around them, so it doesn't even come to that. Now, I said all that to say this. Even though you had opportunities to kind of toughen them up, to kind of let them know the severity, that's one thing. But when you heard these rumors and all of this, and you knew, if anything, you should have been trying to hide him or get him back to Chicago. But once they came to your house, he in your care, man. You got a decision to make. That's your child. You know what I'm saying? Like, at that point, he's your child, even though he may not be your actual son, but he's under your care, he's under your supervision. So when they come knocking on the door talking about he coming with us, hell no. You know what I'm saying? Now I get it that you may end up losing your life in that struggle. But at that same time, you testifying in court does what for Emmett? Like, that does what for the family? You get what I'm saying? Because the people were found not guilty. So what did that really do? You get what I mean? It's like, all I'm saying is, I wouldn't have brought him there if I wasn't going to protect him with my life. Now, true enough, I wouldn't have been all super nice to him and wasn't going to be the gun. Honestly, I probably would have made it so he didn't even want to come. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have glorified it because I knew it wasn't nothing glorious about it. You know what I mean? I mean, at the end of the day, it was a fucked up time. It was a fucked up place. These fucked up times we live in now. But by you being accustomed to the South, you know that. You also know that he is so young and his experiences only lead up from Chicago. And you know for a fact that it ain't even no comparison. Now, true enough, this was 1955. Couple years later, they went and wet Fred Hampton shit up in Chicago. So it ain't like it's just violence just down in the South. but it's different levels. That was the FBI. We talking about like down in Emmett Till's case, like these are just regular everyday individuals. You get what I'm saying? Because he whistled at a you get what I mean? It's like all I'm saying is that the uncle, I understand that he stood up in court and he boom. I get that. But at the same time, it happened at his house under his watch, and he let them take Emmett from out the house. William O'Neal was a grown man. The difference in these two cases, in my opinion, these are only just my opinion. The difference is Fred Hampton as an activist, as a civil rights, as a revolutionary, like, you know that you're going up against the opposition. You know that no matter how positive you are. I mean, the man went to prison for ice cream. They tried to say the man stole ice cream. But the point I'm making is, you know that some way, somehow, they gonna come at you. You know at some form of junction, they gonna do whatever they have to do to either silence you, to try to incarcerate you, or try to stop you from getting your message out. Emmett knew none of that. Emmett was a young teenage boy who was just developing, and the world was somewhat suppressed from him because everyone was trying to be so nice to him because, you know, he was his age, and they didn't really like lace him up for the total structure. So all in all, I feel like out of the two, between William O'Neal and Uncle Moses Wright, Uncle Moses Wright did him a little wronger. Now, that's not to absolve William O'Neal at all. At all, you know what I'm saying? Because 5 years for stealing cars, ain't nobody tell you to steal no cars, man. And at the same time, you knew exactly, you may not have knew the every single detail of what they had planned for Fred Hampton, but you knew they wasn't finna send him no cupcakes. You knew they wasn't finna send him no flowers. You know what I'm saying? So you played a very integral part of his demise. And then to sit there and say, because I seen the interview, to sit there to say he was part of the struggle and all of this, it just shows me that he was delusional. He was a very delusional man that was able to be manipulated by the FBI, and the FBI had all kinds of resources. They got all kinds of ways to infiltrate and to play and to do all these inconnivable things, especially to Fred Hampton was 21. For a young man with that much charisma, that was unifying gangs, unifying people of different races with the Rainbow Coalition. With all of these things he was doing, of course he was a threat. Of course he was dangerous. And of course they was not going to be able to get to him just regularly walking up to him. They had to take somebody of his own race, somebody from his own ethnicity, to try to get to him and bring him down. And that's exactly what they did. In Emmett's case, we talking about two regular guys off the street. You get what I'm saying? And it's like, for all of these people that was around Emmett, it's like, get the cousins, they can only do but so much because they kids themselves. But as the father figure, as the adult in the room that authorized for this young 14-year-old to be down here in these ugly times, I feel like you should have did a little bit more. Testifying in court, I applaud that. But that does nothing for Emmett, you know what I mean? And like I said, when you see what they did to Emmett, I mean, the shit is gonna churn your stomach. But I just felt like, you know what I'm saying, we had to do this one just because, you know, season 3 really gonna be pushing a lot of buttons. And that one was a real good big button push because both cases is fucked up, man. It's like hard to believe shit like that went down. But I just couldn't see how he explains that to Emmett's mama. You get what I'm saying? Like, he didn't take him off the street. He didn't take him from their job. He didn't snatch him from the store. Snatched him from your house. Walked in your house, into the room, and snatched this man off out the bed. and you went back to bed? Like, what's to stop him from coming back the next day and taking your wife or taking your kids? You know what I'm saying? It's like, at some point, you got to draw a line in the sand and say, no, I'm terrified. I'm scared. I know that they hanging people. I know that they doing all these things. But it's something got to be drawn in the sand that say, no, I'm not having this. Like, it stops here. Like, it stops here. You know what I mean? And I just felt like that issues out William O'Neal a little bit, just because if it wasn't William O'Neal, they would have had some other way in this. Like, I felt like with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton, people of that stature, they getting into a fight that they know is a fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, they know that the opposition's coming. They just don't know how it's coming. See, in Emmett's case, he didn't know. He didn't know. It's like a crab that you putting into a boiling pot. He doesn't know it's boiling. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't know. You know what I mean? But yeah. So I just had to do that one. Had to go and get that one. Go and get that one out the way, because that one definitely was going to push some buttons. Got a lot more buttons to push this season on Versus. I hope y'all stay with us right here on S.S.B.G Network. Come see me next Friday, 8 o'clock sharp. Y'all know where I'm at.